So, did you know that based on a study by the New York Post, Americans check their phone on average once every 12 minutes? That's about 80 times a day where people are just burying their heads into their phones. And since the mid-2000s, the advent of the smartphone has shaped modern society to revolve around its ability to connect us to the internet and the society behind it. Now, I know I'm no exception. I know that most of you probably aren't either. The caveat to this connectivity, to this social media, is that we now pay more attention to our newsfeed than the world that the news comes from. And it's because of this that today I would like to illustrate for you 3 significant ways social media has a negative effect on attentiveness. These 3 ways are instant gratification, draining your attention, and drowning out your own thoughts. So what's instant gratification? It's basically the release of dopamine, the reward molecule. It's what you get after you work out, after you get a hug, even after you eat food. According to the American Marketing Association, every time we post, share, like, comment, or send an invitation online, we are creating an expectation. We feel a sense of belonging and advance our concept of self through sharing. We want to feel good. And dopamine is addictive, so it makes sense, hence the term doping. And nothing is faster at giving us a dose of dopamine than social media. How many of you guys have posted something online, have put out a status, a tweet, an Instagram post, and within 5 seconds you're checking to see if anyone's already liked it? And then you post, and then you check again 5 minutes later, and every time that number goes up, you feel good. You get that gratification. This fix is what keeps us locked to our screen though, and makes paying attention to the things that don't give us that dose a lot harder to do. Now, to keep your attention, I'm actually going to use social media to help me out here. I'm going to play a video that's going to explain how apps and sites drain your attention intentionally and why this can be a bad thing. There's no audio.
The knob on the dashboard, turn it up.
Maximize your screen time. Staying on screen complements the previous sailing tactics. Boredom could drive you to motion, so let the screen entertain you. Tiredness can push you to sleep, so let the screen keep you awake, sort of, as long as possible. Always fall asleep with a screen in your hand and put your eyes back on it as soon as you wake. Every moment away from a screen is a moment you might notice the horizon. Keep your head down and let the currents pull you. Here you have allies unknown. Behind the screen are teams of the smartest people and brightest bots competing to hold your attention on them as long as possible. Let them reach you, to pull you back if you turn away. Plus, screens help with number 4. Use your screen to stoke your negative.
Okay, so like you were saying, behind the screen, there are bots and minds to keep you glued to it. They want you to stay on the screen. They want you to feel good. And at the same time, they're drawing your attention away from everything else that you're supposed to be looking at. Whether you're in class, whether you're out on a dinner date, whether you are listening to someone giving an informational speech. Because if you keep your head down, you can look at their ads. And you can't do that if you're looking at the sky. So you coincide all that with instant gratification. The more they reward you, the more you want to come back, and the longer you're there, the more money they make off of your attention. So just to reiterate, social media does a very good job at being in your face and staying there. However, some of mankind's greatest achievements were conceived in near isolation, observing and critically thinking. You have Newton observing the apple falling from the tree and coming up with physics and calculus. You have Darwin exploring the Galapagos and noticing that these different species originate in different areas despite how close the islands are together. This is even marveled in the sculpture, The Thinker. He's distraction-free. He's pondering his own thoughts. He's not paying attention to anything else but what's inside his mind, nothing being shoved into his own face. But social media doesn't allow for this. Every time we're bored, or it's quiet, or we're curious, we go to our phones. We check our phones when we drive, in class if you're sneaky, and now some of you probably check it in the shower. But one time we're quiet in today, just immersed in water, alone to our thoughts, we have something playing in the background. So let me ask you this. If we spend all of our time falling into these patterns that companies want us to fall into, if we're thinking and following these influencers online, and have no time to look up from our own screens and make our own observations, do we truly have the ability to come up with original thoughts and ideas? And that's how it gets to our third point. Social media prevents you from creating your own thoughts. And so in summary, I just want to say that social media has truly changed the world. It connects us to the epitome of human innovation and knowledge ever achieved. However, this connection can also be seen as a snare to your attention, a drug to your brain designed to keep you hooked and keep you oblivious. So I encourage you to be smarter with your smartphone. Thank you.
All right, so Danny, what did you think?
Mark, I really liked your speech. It was really interesting. You had you started off with a really interesting stat, which I thought caught my attention right away, and you looked very well organized. You were just getting straight to the point, so your introduction wasn't too long. I really liked how you had added a joke in there, the doping thing, and that's really fun. And then maybe just knowing how to use tech might be good, like what you're going to be using so that you wouldn't have an issue with knowing volume might be good, because that kind of interrupted your speech. I think maybe also at the end there might have been a few extra photos that might have been unnecessary, but to me it wasn't a huge deal, only because they followed they all kind of looked uniform and clean, but maybe there might have just been a couple extra, but for the most part you seemed really well organized. Maybe a couple parts where you're kind of unsure, but I thought it was overall really good.
All right. Yeah, I like the attention device as well. I thought it worked very effectively, and it was interestingly coincidental with what we've been talking about just a second before, when I'd asked people to kind of shut down their social media so that they were paying attention to you. So there's a nice tie-in there. Very clear identification of the structure. I thought everything in the introduction worked well. The one thing that is not necessary is kind of connected to one of the other, maybe the one or two things that I think are problematic about the speech. Once again, you don't need a title slide for your presentation. You're the title. You're the one who's introducing this. You're telling us who you are. You're telling us what your subject is. You're leading us into that subject. That other thing is just not necessary. You don't need a credit card either. You're just giving everybody starring Mark. Written by Mark. Directed by Mark. We don't need all that kind of stuff. Just get into the presentation. I thought the first third of the speech was really effective with the way information was integrated into the presentation. In the second half of the speech, there's not quite as much information. There's a lot of description and evaluation, which keeps it interesting, but it did feel a little bit like there was less content. And there probably is a way to distribute that more, or to maybe find some additional information to add on those other points. But I like the examples that you had. Most of the structural stuff and the content development is very solid, and the visuals themselves are also pretty good. Like I said, I didn't need the title card. I don't think that the video adds anything. I didn't really understand the point. I mean, there's a point that you're making, but it's not as clearly explained by the video as I think it was by you. And I think you could probably have stolen three of those slides from the video and used them to explain it yourself, instead of letting the video sound go, which I didn't think explained anything. It's talking about something, we're kind of like dropped in the middle of this explanation, and there was obviously stuff that came before that would have made it make more sense. I think you're the one who needs to make some sense out of it. So I appreciate the idea because there's a little animation in there and there's stuff that's happening, and that'll hopefully bring people in. But I didn't think it got you very much for all the effort that you bothered to put into getting it set up and then getting it at the right spot to show us, and then fixing the sound. It felt a little bit like, well, you know, not much bang for the buck, as they say. So it probably would have been the one thing that I would have taken out of the speech. The slides, for instance, with the pictures of people paying attention to their phones and ignoring the people around them, I like that. The idea at the end that people sometimes think and contemplate in solitude and without engaging in others, and I kind of like the historical references that you have there. That's an interesting way of kind of visualizing that for people. I thought that was okay. You do a very good job speaking to the audience for the most part. You seem to know what it is that you want to say and understand the material pretty well. When you look at your notes, it's just to remind you about what the next thing is. It's not to figure out what the next word is, which is sometimes you can see people are just going, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just going to read the next word that's in front of me. You know what it is you're talking about. You just have to look and see, well, what's the next idea that I'm getting to? And that's the way a presentation, I think, works best. All right, thank you.